Welcome to Punch Keys Podcast. I'm Poppy Minix, your co-host, bringing you blunt talk for the fiction novelist.
And I'm Cascade, your other writerly co-host. If you love to ramble about writing and need a tribe, you found us.
Are you ready? We're uncorking now. Let's talk about punching those keys.
Okay, I'm here. I'm ready, and I'm excited. Poppy, I love our topic
you're
tonight.
Excited. Oh my gosh, I know you're so excited. This is awesome.
Oh, also, welcome to Punch Keys, everyone. Hello,
Oh,
we're
hey.
glad you're here.
Yeah. Forgot about those greetings, What? Cass has been waiting for this for like a year, so here we are.
Well, I've been a little afraid to touch it because it's like such a big topic. I think people are looking for information about series writing. That's our topic.
Yes.
You can find a lot of blogs and articles about it, but there's not as many craft books on it as there is just regular novel formatting.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are like, well, just take the novel formatting and make that your series. No, it doesn't work that way. So we are finally decided to just dig in and share all of our blunders as we try and figure this out.
Because it is a tough subject, and you would think that there would be more information out there, but there's just not.
Well, there's a lot of articles, but then it's also the thing, too, where they kind of repeat a lot of the same information, too.
Or defining. It's more of like defining what a series is. It's not necessarily like the process of creating a series.
That's true. Speaking of which, let's define series.
Okay, cool.
Woohoo! There are 3 types of series. I had a little bit of a brain explosion while I was researching this. I knew there were 3 different types of series, and I understood. I could tell you, like, if you gave me a series, I could tell you which group it went in. But the definitions between some of them, I was like, my series is doing both of those. I'm ready to pick. So it's been enlightening, guys. It's been enlightening. So let's start. So there's 3 series. We're going to start with the first one, which is kind of, I think, the series that everyone thinks of right away when you say series writing, and that's the dynamic series. That's like your old school traditional series that have a overarching plot that goes through several books. It's the same main character with the same crew in all those books trying to do this overarching goal. So like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter actually fits into this one. Because although there is like a mini villain that he is facing in each book, he has an overarching villain series that is the bread and butter that comes at the end, which makes it a dynamic series. So this is one of the ones that I was like, oh my goodness, they have to have a big change in the main character from beginning to end. So your character arc is really huge in the dynamic series. The character should change. If you took like your opening scene with them and their ending scene, they should have grown and learned a whole crap ton.
That is the biggest part. It's like every single time there's some kind of growth that has happened through each book.
And they're usually trilogies. They're not usually the ones that go on forever. There's always exceptions. I'm sure there could be a duology. There could be a 5-book. There could be whatever. But usually a dynamic series, the typical ones are going to be trilogies.
Yeah. I mean, when you're learning something, it doesn't take 15 books typically to learn who you are. It takes 3 or 5 or 9. Depends.
Yeah. So the next one is the static series. So the static series is one that I'm actually most familiar with, hugely because I'm so read in urban fantasy, and they're kind of bread and butter in that genre. The static series is the same concept where it's the same protagonist throughout and the same group of core people, but instead of a character that is learning and has this big arc, they stay the same.
Yeah.
What? Supposed to grow and change and have this beautiful arc. But actually in a static series, your character is engaging and engrossing, and what keeps people coming back more and more for that series is the character. They don't really care if the plot's weak. They just are so in love with this character. They want to go on more journeys with this character. These series tend to go on for 10 to 15 books. And then they keep going.
I don't know if they'll ever even stop for some of them.
Yeah, there's a lot in urban fantasy. They mentioned in science fiction, there's a bunch. It makes me think of there's a whole bunch of Star Wars ones.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to think of other ones. So your dynamic series is going to be, your historical ones are in there. Your epic fantasy ones are in there. And then your static is going to have not just urban fantasy, but mystery thrillers. So if you're like with a detective and he's solving a new case each book,
Nice. Yeah.
that's a static series because there's not he doesn't change. He's still the same detective who's going through and doing it. Or like Clive Cussler's Dirk Pitt series.
Mm-hmm.
Dirk Pitt doesn't change. Everyone comes back expecting Dirk Pitt to be the same. He comes in and finds some national treasure or adventure or place. And it's a new adventure that he's going through, and he's affecting the world in each book. That's
Nice.
static series.
Awesome.
And then the last one, I should probably say too, sorry guys, I'm all over right now. Dynamic series are also
So
called
excited.
serial series. Static series are also called episodic or procedural series.
Yep.
And then the third one is the anthology book series, which is also called interlinking series.
Which I like interlinking so much more because an anthology to me is like one book with a lot of authors in it, but it's not that case with the series because tell us, Cass, what's the anthology book series?
The anthology book series is where they're basically in the same universe. So there is a central location or a certain event that affects a whole group of people or ties a whole group of people together. And oftentimes, always, your books are going to have different protagonists for each book, but they're going to be in the same world, same town, fighting the same volcano, whatever it is they're doing. And it gets a little tricky, too, because sometimes you'll have, like, Kelly Armstrong has a static character. So she'll have, like, 2 or 3, but then she'll switch on you. And she's not alone. It happens where there's like chunks of static series within an anthology series. So that happens too, where you're like with two or three books, you're with that particular couple, protagonist, whatever. And then the next 2 or 3, it's a different one. But it's the same world. It's the same universe. They have some of the same friends. They probably have cameos from the other couple or protagonist that you were with.
Yep.
All of that comes back. That still counts in your anthology series.
Yep. That's what I'm writing right now. And that's like a massive thing in romance where the town is the same, but the character's same. It's a mafia and all 3 of the brothers are going to go through each book or whatever.
I think romance primarily plays in this series. Even your paranormal romance plays in this type of series as well.
It tends to go to urban fantasy when it continues going into static or dynamic. It tends to jump
because you're drawing out that romance usually, right? You're drawing it out, even if it's the B-line storyline. You're drawing out over a few books. As where in a romance, you're completing that romantic arc within the one book,
and you want to end in an HEA. So of course that's going to end the book. And so how do you continue your series? Well, you make an interlinking series, and you continue in the same world. Or you continue with the sister or the brother or the best friend.
Yep, exactly. So that's a lot of information. We're not going to quiz you. No. I actually found a really great blog. I was looking at different ones that described different series, and most of them were just like blogs that list the different series. I actually found a really good one, a Reedsy blog that went in and talked about how to succeed with each type of series, how to develop series, all of that stuff. So I will put a link to that article in the episode description so you guys have it.
So kind. Thank you, Cass.
You are welcome. Me research? What?
Never. Yeah.
Or always.
Always. Every single time. There's just what? Yeah.
Okay. So series writing. Guys, I'm not going to lie. I've been like writing a series that I absolutely love. And I realized that I am planning a dynamic series and I have a static character. So I don't really know how I'm going to deal with that right now or what I'm going to do. And it's not
really
that you can't,
weird hybrid.
I do. It's not that you can't have hybrids, right? You can have hybrids. You can break rules.
Yep.
But I think it's a problem, the fact that I broke the rule before I knew it was a rule. That usually means you haven't done it right. I think that's a red flag right there. You can't like find out you broke a rule after you did it and be like, oh, that's art. You like have to intentionally know you're breaking it when you're breaking it. And then the other thing is, if I'm taking these 2 series and I'm looking at mushing them and what I'm doing, there are reader expectations. Readers are drawn to certain types of series. So a series reader isn't going to read all 3 types of series usually. I mean, there are people who read everything, but like your Uber fans are probably drawn to a certain type of series. They have certain expectations, even if they don't know in their head that, oh, I don't really care about plot. I'm just here for this character that's the same and I love them so much every book.
Yep.
I'm like, oh, that's a reader expectation for that series.
Yeah.
And you also have to look at, okay, what's your genre? What are you playing and what are you writing? Because certain readers of certain genres have expectations. We're not saying that the industry has all of these rules and you have to conform and you can't be an artist. We're saying if you want readers and you want them to be happy and love the story, understand what their expectations are.
Yeah.
So understand what genre you're writing, what type of series that makes your series, and then study writing that series.
Yep.
That would be my advice to start off with.
Yeah.
Trust me, guys, I'm going to go take my own advice after this.
Yeah.
And back up and be like, wait a minute here.
Yep. I completely agree with you on that one. I decided, apparently, without knowing, because I was still relatively new, but I like how it's turned out, where the series that I was writing is a duology, and it is a dynamic series. But my main characters, I have a dual POV, and one of them is a positive change arc, which means that basically she had a lot to learn and she has changed through the series. The other character is a flat arc, meaning he is who he is and he's changing the world around him. So sometimes I feel like when you're talking about these things, your static series is your flat arc, meaning your character is like, this is who I am. I'm going to change the world around me. And so every single time when you're in a static series, it's like a new goal to get what they want to make the world better. That's that. You know, it's like every new piece of the puzzle, whether it be like an over arc or not, they're still going to remain who they are. That's that. And so the dynamic is like, you're going to learn something every single time and grow a little bit more. And so I have two characters in the same book that kind of do both. So I think, but it works. For me, it works. I love it. So I'm hopefully other people will love it too. They seem to, but it is one of those where you just got to take what you do, but understand what you're doing at the same time. Cass is right on that.
Let's expand this conversation and let's have like a real talk about this, though.
Oh yeah,
I think you're not really being honest here. I think you absolutely have an anthology series, and it's a static prologue.
Okay,
because she has like a 10-book series that follows in this exact same universe that follows after everything that happens with this duology. That would mean you haven't, and they're 10 books. She has a different couple for each book.
Yep.
But she has her prologue, which is a duology. So it's basically a static duology inside of an anthology.
Because if you don't know me yet, I like to complicate things. I think that's just great. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do all three. How about that? Yep. Take it. It's great. I love it.
It works. That's the thing with all of these rules. It's not saying that you can't break them or you have to do it this way. It's saying just understand it. Understand your readers' expectations. Because if you start getting bad reviews, their expectations haven't been met. And understanding why, sometimes it has nothing to do with your storytelling or your characters. It was their expectations and what it was pitched as. And do those align?
Yeah.
And if you don't know, that's a big gamble.
That is a big gamble. And so if we back up and we say, okay, so when you're first starting out in writing, the best thing for you to do is
just went on. Sorry.
Oh, it's no problem.
It's really cold out here in the West Coast. We had snow the other day.
That blows my mind. But yes, I hear you. It's like October. Why is there snow? I am so confused.
But so if you hear that, I can't turn it off because I'll turn into a popsicle. So we're just going to deal with it.
We don't want that. We don't want like teeth chattering Cass. That would be just weird. Okay. So when you're first starting out as a writer and you write a book, do you have plans to continue? Do you have plans? And I think that's the thing. I think when you consider it, you either have a book that is 3 books, or you have a book, or you have a book that could potentially go into another book. But I think in the industry, there's a big saying that says if people are buying this, like, do not stop. And so I think you end up with a lot of static series that you have this great character because you started this as one book and your editor, publisher said, okay, this needs to be more than one book. Keep going, keep going. Or you had ideas for 3 books, but then it just kept on for that. And now you have 14, 15 years later, whatever, So I think it just depends. Like when you think about process and what you're doing and when you're starting out, I mean, the obvious choice if you've never published before is to make something that is standalone. That is going to get you query attention. And it's going to be, this is one of those things when you say, I'm going to query something, you can be like, here's my book. It could go into something else. Cool. You want it? Cool.
So the actual verbiage on that, whenever you're pitching, you always pitch it as a standalone, but you actually say it's a standalone with series potential.
Yes.
And they actually love that because they want to make money. They want to know that if this does well, there's more right there and it's going to make even more money then.
Yes.
But they also want to know it's a standalone book because if it doesn't go well and doesn't go great, they don't want to be signed for the books after it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you would pitch it, as a standalone with series potential.
Exactly. And, there's that saying that, if somebody's buying it, keep going. And so you end up with these static series where you have the main character that just keeps going and going and going. And they have a new mission and they have that. And the readers fall in love with this character. You know who I'm thinking about, Cass. Mercy Thompson.
She's fabulous.
She's fabulous. How can you not get enough of her? She's wonderful. And so she doesn't change through this series, but there's a new quest that brings her some kind of, not necessarily growth, just new understanding. And so it's really interesting as this unfurls. And it does make me wonder about process sometimes, because when you're thinking about books and when you're thinking about writing, when you really, really get obsessed with what you're doing, you might write one book and you say, okay, this book is cool. That's great. But then you've created this world and you might get a little more obsessed, or you might be like, oh my God, this could be this sprawling, crazy, I'm going to make a new language, like we're going to keep going. And you just get so excited that you create this massive, massive world. So it just depends on what you're looking for. Do you have a character that is the same person and he's going to change the world? Or do you have somebody that's like, oh my God, I am a baby person and I need to be a big girl person. So like, how do you do like, what are you doing when you're trying to process this stuff?
That is a fabulous description.
I'm so glad. And it really sucks sometimes when you're trying to publish, if you're trying to go traditional, because for some of these dynamic series, they might not want all 3 or 4 or 5 of your books where somebody is growing. They might just want the one. And while you might have in your head that there's more to this story, they may or may not want it. They just want the first book. And so what do? Do you go and you continue writing it? What do you think, Cass? What's the answer to that one?
Well, I think you know my answer.
I do know your answer.
Okay. There's so many steps in all this. Why is all this always so complicated?
I'm
sorry,
so
guys. I don't.
complicated.
None of it's easy. So first of all, we're telling you have to know your genre to understand which type of series you're writing.
I agree.
And now we're going to say how many books you write in that series hugely depends on if you're self-publishing or traditionally publishing.
Yes.
If you are traditionally publishing, if you haven't listened to our interview from season 1 with Scott Rankin, I would totally say you should listen to it, especially if you're looking at traditional publishing.
Gosh, yes.
If you're interested in young adult writing, science fiction writing, diverse writing, he's got really great stuff. So he gave advice where he's like, he has a couple, he's a series writer, but he doesn't write out the series. He just writes the first book.
Yeah.
And then he goes and writes the first book of a different series because he doesn't know what's going to get picked up.
Yeah.
And so if he made the mistake of writing out the second book and that first book never got picked up.
Yep.
And he wasn't interested in going the self-publishing route. So it was just lost in a drawer. And so if you're not interested in doing the self-publishing route, if you're going traditional all in, it's better to have a couple first books in your series, see what gets picked up, and then once it gets picked up, start writing the other books. However, if you are interested in self-publishing, you are going to do better if you have at least three books written instead of one.
So much.
Because people are more inclined to buy a book, especially if they're series readers. I'm a series reader. So if I look at a book and I see that it's book 1 in a series and it's the only book out, I'm like, I'll wait till more come out because I'm going to binge them. It's like Netflix, right?
Yes.
Netflix is gold because you get to binge the whole season. And now people hate the traditional format of TV where you watch one episode a week. They're like, what is this nonsense? I'm like that as a reader.
I have a super funny story about this. Can I break in super fast?
Please do.
So I have a duology, right? And there's an extended amount of time between book 1 and book 2.
Ugh.
But one of the
is putting it nicely.
It is,
and it's
very
not her
extended.
fault. That's just
it's not.
The industry
It's just
how
the
it
industry.
happens, and you just got to roll with it.
Yeah, it just things take time. Okay, so I have a book, and I have book 1 and I have book 2, and that is the literal end of the series. They are 4 years apart from each other. So book 1, I literally had a Goodreads reader tag it and put it into, because you can tag your stuff, like you can say like, oh, spring 2021, like whatever you want to put on there, YA romance, blah, blah, blah. You can put it into your own folders. So they put it into a folder, and it cracked my ass up because they put it into a folder, do not trust, want to read, wait for second book. And I was like, oh my God, I totally get you. I totally get you. I do. Because
4
it's like,
years later,
hold up. I don't want to fall in love with book 1 and be like, where's book 2? Where is book 2? You know, because I get it. I totally get it. Putting stuff out, people don't want to see one book. They want to see 2, 3, 4 books. They want to make sure that you are there. And that's when you start becoming known. You get a following. You get all these people who are just needing more of your work because they just blow through reading what you have. So, all right, there's my fun story. Sorry for breaking in. Go ahead.
No, that's totally fine. So you get to go a little bit faster pace if you're going with self-published and you want to have books stacked up, ready to go. If it's traditional published, you want to have books stacked up, ready to go, but not all in the same series.
Yes.
Or you can make things really complicated like me and decide that you're going to do every traditional route possible, all the agents, all the publishers, and then look at doing self-publishing. So, yeah.
But book 2
just want to have everything
calling.
ready, I guess. Everything has to be ready and done in my world, so I don't know.
And for me, I did a standalone, and then my editor came in and said, I need more books from you. You need to continue this series. And I went, I'm sorry, what? Because I expected like, oh, here's my book. It's done. And they're like, no, but I need more of your books. And I'm like, crap. What do I do? Okay, so you're going to have writer moments. Just if you're new at this, you're going to have writer moments where you go, am I ever going to have another idea again? And there's going to be this little voice in your head that's going to be like, this is it. This is it. This is all. That's all there is to it. And you're going to freak out and you're going to be like, there's never going to be another idea ever. And I don't know what to do. And then somebody's going to say, you should make this series. And you're going to say, I don't know how to do that. And then you're going to sleep and you're going to wake up and you go, oh my God, I have 5 books in my head. And so all of a sudden you do. And you have all these ideas of how you can extend this series in an interlinking type series. And that's what happened to me. You know, I had a standalone. I was like, I got my standalone. Here it is. That's all there is to it. And it's like, no, we're going to need more from you on that one. And now I have a world, and I have a world full of characters with romance, and that's all there is to it. So, you know, it just depends. But I sat and I plotted out these next 5 books from that. And I think that is sort of, if we want to shift into another topic, is like, are you a pantser? Are you a plancer? Are you a plotter? Because that's going to affect how your series runs.
It is. I guess I'm technically a planster.
You're like borderline pantser. You're like a plancy pantser. I don't know.
There we go. That sounds like a really comfortable pair of pants. I would that. So for me, I think it's all about note taking.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where the bread and butter is with series writing. If you want to plot it all out with your plot beats for each book, the whole arc, that's fine. If you want to go in and be surprised, that's fine. But consistency is the name of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think cupcakes level you up. cupcakes in a series is a whole nother level to cupcakes in a book, one book. And so having good notes, guys, you might as well just organize them all and make a little encyclopedia.
Yeah, you should.
I mean, you can have your character encyclopedia. You could have your world building
World.
encyclopedia,
Yeah.
your series encyclopedia. You could have, I don't know, if you're writing about witches, you could have like all the different spells you use so you stay consistent. No, I'm not writing about witches. What are you talking about?
What?
Keeping notes. I think that's one of the benefits too of having 3 of your series written versus writing 1 and pitching it, is because it's so nice to go in and have like write book 2 and 3 and be like, oh, I need to add that little cupcake into 1 so they know this is coming.
Mhm.
So like I have book 1 done in a series and it's out pitched, and I'm working on book 2 and I'm like, oh, I didn't quite get that cupcake into book 1. I'm going to go drop that in real quick.
Yes.
And I really think that makes a beautiful connecting lace. That lace work, weaving. It weaves all of your books together. It doesn't have to happen, and the depth in which you do it can vary. But you don't have to be a plotter in order to write a series, and you don't have to be a plotter in order to lay cupcakes.
I
You
agree.
do have to be a note taker.
You have to be a note taker, and you have to be somebody where, okay, so for me, when I got news that I needed to write additional books into the series, I went, oh crap. And then I slept on it. And then I came up with a bunch of new ideas and I pitched those ideas. And it was like, yes, do that. And then I literally dropped everything. Cass knows this. I'm like, I'm freaking out. I have to go write a book now. And so like I dropped everything and I started plotting. I started taking notes. I started figuring out what was going on. And by time I got my edits back from the editor, I had a general idea of what book 2 was going to be. And I was able to pump up some of the characters in book 1 to make sure that it matched and led to book 2, because there does need to be some kind of link. I mean, I say that, but sometimes it just kind of comes out of thin air. It depends on what type you're doing. But sometimes you can just tell if somebody had no idea what their next book was going to be, because you start reading it and you're like, what is this? Like, where did it go? Because sometimes you end up with like a static series or episodic where you know that they knew what the heck was going on for book 1, 2, and 3. They took notes, they planned it out, and then the editor was like, don't you dare stop, you keep going. And then they got to book 4 and it was like, wait, what? Like, it just is kind of confusing. So continuing to sort of at least plot, or at least start, or at least take notes on what the next book is going to be by time you're editing with the editor or with yourself, or however it works, editing the previous book is going to help you tremendously. Like for me, that was a game changer for being able to make sure that stuff links and that stuff works, is being able to have the second book at least in draft form by time the first one was being final edits at the absolute last, so that I knew what was going on. Because by time you end up with your book being picked up, or you know that it's going to publish, you're probably planning for book 2 if you need to plan for book 2. So being able to go through and figure out what's happening for the next book will help add stuff into your first book. So that is a thing.
Definitely. And I think too, it depends on the series. So like a dynamic series, you're going to have to at least have like a conceptual thing of where you're going through all of it.
Yes.
Even as you write your first book.
Yes.
So you have to understand like what the final end and scene is at the end of the series to understand where to start it in a dynamic.
Because like, where would Lord of the Rings be if he didn't have the ending as he started the first book? He knew where the heck that was going. That was like a lot of preparation and note taking. When
you look at an anthology series, you absolutely can't. You've like already established the world. So you absolutely can come in and when you're editing with your editor, if you get traditionally published, and drop in some notes for book 2 as you're writing that. You can play with that stuff going traditional publishing, and it's completely fine, and just stay on top of it.
Yep.
But if you're self-publishing, just have a bunch of stuff ready to go out.
Ready to go.
Yeah.
If you do book one and people jump on it, they may or may not. Book one, first books are tough because like when you publish them, it's wonderful and you're a debut author and it's amazing and it's exciting. And the industry knows that you're a debut author. So this might not be your bestest of best work ever because it's your debut. But they're excited about it and they're supporting you and they're jumping in and we're doing stuff. It's awesome. But they want book 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. And so that's where you start really jumping into the industry. It's not your first book. Your first book is wonderful. Keep going. And some people like explode on their first book. And I know that when they do that, sometimes if they didn't have anything else going on, sometimes it can be very terrifying because they're all of a sudden, everybody's like, oh my God, give me another book. And so they panic and they write it.
That's a lot of pressure.
Doesn't turn out so good because they're freaking out and they're just, you know, nobody does well under pressure like that. It's like,
well, unless you're Poppy.
Unless you're me.
She likes to do everything at the last minute. She loves that pressure feeling.
It's a love-hate relationship. But nonetheless, if I'm late and I'm running out of my house and I'm trying to find my keys, I will absolutely, utterly panic. You all know you've been there. And all of a sudden you're like, where are my keys? Where are my keys? I cannot find my keys because I'm freaking out and I need to be there right now and I'm freaking out. And they're in your hand. I mean, it's absurd. It's like the way that we panic and that our brains work. We do not do well with pressure like that. And so having something where you at least know what the heck is going on, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to write your second book completely, but having something, even if you're a pantser, even if you're somebody that does not plot and you're terrified of it and you hate it, knowing somewhere where it's going to be and where it's going to go is going to help you tremendously if you have a series potential going on.
Well, you have to leave threads.
Yeah.
You have to leave the option for more to happen, for more things to evolve and go if you're doing a series. You can't tie everything up.
No. I would highly recommend if you're publishing your first book and it's going to be a series to have your second book at least in really good draft form. That's just me though.
I would say once it gets picked up.
Once it gets picked up. Yeah. It's not like, you know, you're querying and you need to have 3 books. You don't. Have 1 book, but know kind of where it's going to go potentially. And if it does get picked up and you end up starting to edit, get that second book written in your draft form so that you know what's happening. Because if you have characters pop in, I mean, silly things, ages change, you know, lineage changes, the world changes in book 2, and you need to make sure that you kind of understand what's happening in book 2 to actually really understand what's happening in book 1. We learn so much. I mean, just you and me writing together, when we talk about it, I mean, we're talking about book 2 right now, and we're like, oh man, we're starting to plot out book 2 and we're learning stuff about book 1 because we're plotting out book 2. So
don't lie. We're plotting out books 3, 4, and 5 as well.
That as well, because we're learning out this full series.
Everything.
It is changing everything. And it's like, oh crap, but what about this? Well, that breaks it. It's kind of like one giant plot hole because like you're going through one book and you're like, oh, I did that and it broke this. It's sort of like that with the series as well. Like you sort of have to know what the heck is going on at the end game to make sure that it's working for your previous books.
There's just something for me, storytelling where I want little seeds of the ending to be in the beginning. I don't know. That just completes it for me and it makes my heart really happy.
I utterly agree with that.
But it doesn't always happen that way. There are a lot of series that don't do that. And there's so many factors in this. You do what you can.
Yeah. I agree with you.
I think with the static ones, I think consistency is the name of the game. I think with dynamic series, I do think you have to know the end game there.
I agree.
And I absolutely think you have to know thematically where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big part of dynamic arcs and character arcs.
Yeah.
A big thing for me with anthology series is tone and the reader promises you set up in book 1.
Yes.
And anthology series are really heavy in romance, so I'm going to let Poppy dig into those.
You have to have a link. I mean, and Cass is totally right on tone. I mean, for me, I have a rom-com. Book 1 is the zany, happy Christmas, like, woo! We are fun. We are candy. And book 2, I took it a little heavier than I should have. And I had to back the heck up because I was like, ooh, that's kind of dark. Ooh, I was just in a mood apparently when I was writing it. And I was just really needed these darker tones. And I was like, oh, wait, I can't do this. It's a rom-com because that's the series. And that's the link,
And you can have, like, I think, darker, deeper rom-coms. But I think you've already set up, in that situation, you've set up reader expectations for a certain tone and a certain thing in book 1.
Yes.
And with anthologies, even though it's a different couple, you have promised a certain tone. You have promised, there's a lot of promises you've made there.
There are. There has to be links, and one of those links is very much tone. There's certain things that you can do and that you can't. Tone. Okay, so like you can't go from happy, zany, awesome rom-com to super dark despair gonna make your reader cry. You know what I mean? It can't be like a flip-flop. I signed in for this to be super happy and for me to just zoom through it and be like, yay, and you gave me horrible things in the world. And now I'm crying and now I'm pissed because like that was not what I thought was going to happen. I think that a tonal shift like that is not possible when you're doing an anthology book series. You have to make sure that you maintain, of all things, the tone that you have set. You can have different situations, you can have different things happening, but you have to make sure that it's the same level of attitude and tone because you want to change it up. You don't want it to be like, this is exactly the same story over and over again with people whose names are changed. You don't want that either. You want something, but it still needs to be tonally the same. And it still needs to be, there needs to be some kind of link, whether it be siblings or whether it be the world particular. You can't be like, oh, now it's on Earth and tomorrow it's in space. I mean, there has to be, what's the link there? Is it the characters? Because that's typically what happens in a static series. It's like they could be going from planet to planet, but they're still the same people. So it's kind of this, like the opposite in anthology. It has to be the same world, even though it's different people in each time.
I would say also, so the tone, obviously, the depth that you're going, the emotions that you're drawing.
Yes.
Those all go in tone, but there's other reader promises that you're doing with that too. If book 1 is a single point of view from the female.
Yes.
And then book 2 is a dual point of view. There's a reader expectation. There's a high chance that they're going to shift and be okay. But a lot of times,
depending,
what you're delivering, if you're delivering in book 1 a menage a trois with 3 guys.
Yeah.
And then in book 2, you're doing like a super hyper religious male, female, married in a church, met at church. Those
not going to work out.
Those are different reader bases.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. If you are jumping genre, even
you're
if
still
it's
romance though, it's still
but
romance.
if you're even subgenre, if you're jumping subgenre, you're still not, you're not doing it. Like you have to maintain your,
they all live
your
in the same
subgenre.
town.
Doesn't matter if you're jumping. I know. Cass is talking to me directly because of very specific things that I'm working on in my series right now.
No, I'm not. It was just a really good example.
It is a great example.
But even not just that, but the fact if you're going first person, single point of view, and then you jump to Omni in book 2.
Yes. Or you jump to second person,
it changes
past.
the feel a lot. It's really good. There's a consistency in anthology as well, not just static. The anthology has consistency in the reader promises that you've set up in book 1.
Yeah. So I'll use me as an example here. So in this anthology interlinking series that I've done, the things that remain the same are the island. The island is a private island. It's Simona Island. Like they are living on this island. It is the culture of the island. That is that. Like that is the main core of the storytelling. It's a female single point of view, present tense, first person. I can't change that. As much as I really thought about changing in book 3 because I plotted all this out, that I would switch to a male POV. And I'm like, I can't do that. I would like to, but it's going to abrupt too much within the reader. Because now that I've gone through 2 books of being the same thing, changing it in the 3rd just isn't going to work for my people. So I need to make sure that I'm doing that correctly.
And it's
Granted,
not saying that romances don't succeed that way or that she can't
Yeah.
write it that way.
Yes.
It's like you signed a reader expectation contract in that first book. Hold to
Yes.
it if you want to make your readers give you all of the beautiful reviews.
Exactly. It's like that whole first chapter thing and going through the book. Series is kind of the same thing. Even if it's a different character each book, it doesn't matter. You signed on with this first book like you signed on with the first chapter. So now your series is going, your reader's going through it, and you need to maintain that the same thing that they signed in for. So I can't kill off people in my rom-com in book 4. Whoa. Like that would be super bad. Like it's just not a thing that we do. So I want to make sure that I'm being consistent for my reader and that it's just fun and light. And this is what it does. So I can't go too dark and deep.
Just to reiterate, guys, the reason you're being consistent is because different readers are drawn to different things.
Yeah.
So a reader who's going to love the intensity and the deep and the killing off the character and making you cry is probably not going to be the same reader who's going to love the light, easy, Christmas, zany read. So they're never going to find that book 2 because book 1, they're going to be like, this is not my thing. And then you're going to have everyone who loved book 1 go to book 2 and be like, this is not my thing.
This is not one of those moments where you can cross market.
Yeah.
Like as much as be like, well, I'll bring in a whole nother set of people to read. No, you're just going to confuse the people who are already reading you and confuse the people who are now potentially reading you because they're going to read the one thing that you did and be like, what is
in mid-series to start something.
They don't. They start with
so I'm like, oh, this whole new group of people is going to come in mid-series. They're going to start at book 1. Everyone starts at book 1.
They do.
And they're going to be like, that's not my thing.
Some people may, but then,
And it's totally fine if you want to write different subgenres, different genres, whatever, but you should definitely be consistent within your series.
I will jump in. If it's an interlinking series, especially in romance, I will totally jump into book 3 or 4 or 5.
Oh, I'm a book 1 girl all the way.
But you're also like an urban fantasy reader and a fantasy reader, and those start from the beginning and have to go
also
through.
a romance reader, and I'm also an interlinking series reader, and I always start at book 1.
See, I started reading romance as an interlinking series reader, and so for me, I can jump about, and it's really okay as long as it's consistent. But if I get into a book where all of a sudden it makes zero sense because I needed to know what happened to the one before, I'm confused. Like you can't start and then get bored because you're writing a series and be like, you know what? I think I'm going to link book 5, 6, and 7 because then you're people who can jump around and they're going to find book 7 and they're going to be like, what the hell is happening? Whereas everybody was like, these are great. They're totally standalone. And then all of a sudden you're in a book that's not standalone. It's really confusing. So
and your interlinking should be standalones.
It should all be standalones. It shouldn't be like you switch it up midway because you're being artistic.
There's like a comfort
that's not a way to do it.
Blanket for the reader because there's some linking world or event thing, but whatever is happening there is handled, and there's not a new problem that comes up from the answer. It's just done.
Yes. Yep.
And honestly, all of the series are so fun to read.
Gosh, they are.
I know. I wanted to say earlier, like, I think readers do have a tendency to like a particular type. I guess I would say static barely beats out interlocking for me.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. I love them all. I love the interlinking.
You got to really grab me to keep me in a dynamic one because I think it just takes some brain power and some focus. And I am older and have kids running around all the time, and it's hard.
I think that is kind of a time of life thing. If you can be like, I'm going to wait for this book and I'm going to reread the other books so that I can get ready for the book. I can't do that. I'm much better with a standalone at this point in my life, but that's my point in my life. When I'm retired and I can sit down and be like, you know what? I'm going to blow through 14 books in the next month. Then cool. I will completely do that. I do not have that capability right now. So I think it just depends on what you like to write, what you enjoy, what people are reading, what you like to read for planning out your series. But it doesn't matter which one you do, kind of knowing what your game is going to be in doing this, even if you don't write them, but sort of having an idea of what the next couple are going to be is really helpful. It doesn't mean that you need to write them all out. So especially if you're going traditionally published. But man, gosh, I love series. And series are so in right now. You don't see too many
When have
standalones.
series not been in? Like
I agree
series
with
have
you.
always been in.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, you're right.
There's some
I think it depends on your genre. Like there's certain genres that just don't seem to do series, but then there's some where it's like that's all there is.
Series?
Literary is very standalone, tends to be. You don't really see a whole lot of series writing in literary.
Well, that's a good point. You got me there.
You know, I think it just depends. Romance is huge on the series. Like that's the thing.
Action thrillers, big on it.
Action
series,
thrillers.
big on it.
Yep.
Fantasy is obviously big on it.
Yep.
I mean,
a lot of horror is standalone. Oh gosh, what is that one that goes on and on and on and on? I know what you did last summer.
By R.L. Stein.
Goosebumps
totally
goes on and on.
It was not what you were thinking of at all.
It was not.
I don't even know if that counts as horror. Is that? I don't even know.
Yes. Oh, it's like YA. It's like a middle grade, I think, horror.
I loved those so much in middle school.
But those are definitely an interlinking. Yeah, because you can pick up book whatever 26 and be like, "Yep, I know exactly what's going on." So research your genres, research what you want to do, and don't go nuts and think that you need to have start to finish, although that's fabulous. And if it takes you 20 years to get this whole world going, that's great. But if you're trying to get published fairly quickly, get one book out.
I completely agree. Look at your genre. Look at what kind of series you want to write. Decide if you want to traditionally publish or self-publish. That depends. That really narrows in how much of the series you're going to write. And then, I don't know, make sure you've got your writing buddies there with you because it's a long haul, guys. Series writing is a commitment.
It is. And if you're self-publishing, I mean, we're going to have marketing here probably soon and talk about launching a book. Launching it correctly is how you're going to succeed. And if you are doing a series, if you're self-publishing, get that out one after another. Have it ready because you're going to start being noticed in the industry when you have out more than one book.
And it doesn't mean you have to write a book a month. It just means however long it takes you, have a couple books.
Yeah. Don't be like, I wrote a book, I'm going to self-publish, they're going to throw it in the market, there it is, and be like, ooh, I should probably write book 2. No. If you're self-publishing, have two and 3 and even more if you need to, just ready to go and just launch them.
And not first drafts. These are like...
No. Published, ready to go.
Edited. Things you're talking about.
Book buzz going on, things that you've sent out to people to review. Yeah.
There's so much with launching a book, guys. It's insane.
We're going to go through it.
There's so much launching a book, whether you're going traditional or self-publishing. That's just the path. Just gear up and prepare for it. You're basically starting a small business. It's a pain in the butt. Writing your stories is way more fun, but...
I still love it. I like all the aspects of it. It's so interesting.
It's okay. You got this. You can do it.
You can do a series. Yes.
And if not, you'll get it right the next time because we don't stop writing.
No, we just keep writing and writing and writing. Those ideas do not go away. They keep coming.
Very true. All right. Keep writing. Always pop into our Discord group if you want to talk to us about your series or some things that you've learned going through it or marketing a series. Launching a series, tips on that. I think people would love to hear. And if you're with us and loving us, please go give us a review.
Please do. We would really
that would really help.
It.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Until next time, keep punching those keys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. And if you liked this episode, please subscribe and give us that clickable 5-star love.
Got writer questions or feedback? Reach out through our website. And until next time, make sure to punch the keys.